The preceding program was made possible by a grant from the...
Funding for the American frontier is provided by the Independent Order of Foresters, the family fraternity, whose members enjoy fraternal and social benefits.
Boom, 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 rich, poor, black, white, how you look, you can make it if American. Just do your stuff and do it well. Lots before us did it and we think they're swell. It's the spirit of America, the people, they're truly American. They're truly American.
Hi. Say, ever go in much for heroes? Maybe you're thinking to yourself, what good are they? Well, with me, they're strong medicine. I got a whole drugstore full of them here for whatever happens to be hurting. Well, how about you? Ever have one of those times when the whole world is down on you? I mean everybody. You know, like you're a clod, an idiot, a sad case. Well, when it happens to me, and I want to tell you there are some days I can't even get a good rating from a fortune cookie, the best medicine I have is this one. I call him Harry, even if he was President of the United States. He liked to be called Harry. Now, this man, he had the common touch as few men ever have. But despite his love of the crowd, he had isolation ward courage. You know what that means? Well, that means that when the whole crowd put him down, he had uncommon, stubborn, lonely courage. The kind that can send me out ready to lick the whole world barehanded. Now, from 9 minutes after 7 p.m., April 12, 1945, when he moved up from vice president to president, the chuckling began.
Harry who?
What did he ever do?
Ran a men's store, sold shirts. How'd it work out? Went broke, lost his shirt.
This is the guy who's going to win the war?
Wait till he has to deal with Churchill and Stalin. They'll take him to camp. Candy from a baby. Where'd he go to college? From the School of Hard Knocks. Boy, can you see him giving orders to FDR's distinguished cabinet officers? What'd he ever do? Artillery battery, World War I. I kind of like the guy's looks.
One of Harry Truman's first jobs was to prepare to go to the crucial Potsdam Conference in Germany in place of the fallen President Franklin D. Roosevelt to meet with Russia's powerful Stalin and England's magnificent Churchill. No one previously had bothered to brief him on this vital series of Allied meetings determining Allied World War II policy. Distinguished U.S. cabinet officers who knew Truman had not been present nor briefed by the late President Roosevelt feared Harry would be too weak and uninformed to work with these giant foreign statesmen. But they didn't know how thoroughly he always did his homework. So they set out to lead him around. Secretary of the Treasury Morgenthau, who had created the policy of stripping Germany of all industry after the war, phoned Truman to say it would be essential for him to accompany the president to Potsdam to help him.
No, Mr. Morgenthau. You will stay here and run the Treasury. I will represent the United States at Potsdam.
This shocked and worried the distinguished Roosevelt cabinet, which decided Morgenthau should insist on going or else threaten to resign.
If that's the way you feel, Henry, I accept your resignation as of noon today.
Another shocking surprise was that President Harry didn't act like a president, actually stood in Navy chow lines on his way to Potsdam. And a final surprise was that Churchill liked Truman instantly, found him direct and decisive. Stalin found him practical, blunt, and knowledgeable. Truman insisted Russia expedite their agreement to help with the Japanese War, which promised another year of unnecessary killing and destruction. Next, while he was still at Potsdam, history's toughest decision was thrown at Harry Truman. He had only recently been briefed that the U.S. had been perfecting an unbelievable atom bomb. Scientists now informed him it was finally ready. That called for a frightening decision. Do we use it to end the Japanese War? Truman demanded of military experts the best predictions of casualties expected on both sides if we invaded Japan. The answer? 1 million. Truman did not appoint committees to decide, did not ask staff to share the frightening responsibility.
A short time ago, an American airplane dropped one bomb on Hiroshima and destroyed its usefulness to the enemy. That bomb has more power than 20,000 tons of TNT.
And he bore alone the stunned worldwide reaction. But Harry Truman, very few noticed, ended World War II. Now, with the war ended, President Harry became everybody's enemy, under the most brutal problems to confront any U.S. president. Why, he just couldn't win. Some said bring the troops home quickly. Some said no. The Russians began to take over a starving, shattered Europe. Some said stop them. Some said, not our problem. U.S. inflation spiraled as Americans scrambled to buy everything they had worn out during the war. Some said scrap war rationing and price controls. Some said no. The powerful war-strengthened labor unions threatened to shut down the U.S. with strikes in, steel, oil, rubber, autos, food, railroads. The world was sure that our little man from Missouri would be steamrollered by powerful Russians, financiers, unions, and by the Congress. But there were more surprises ahead. For instance, Russia's hard-nosed negotiator, Molotov, visited Truman. Just a courtesy call. But Truman discourteously scolded Molotov in Missouri language for breaking the Yalta Agreement with FDR to let Poland establish free government.
We don't operate on a one-way basis.
Molotov said, I have never been talked to like that in my life.
Carry out your agreements, and you won't be talked to like that.
When the Russians moved into Greece, Truman pushed through the $300 million Greek assistance program. Then he sent Stalin a bill for $7 billion to be paid immediately unless Russia promptly returned the ships and equipment we had previously loaned them as part of the Lend-Lease program. Well, Stalin was infuriated. Didn't think FDR really meant Russia would actually have to repay. Well, after that, strikes hit the U.S. hard. President Harry, running the nation, some said as if he were the mayor of Independence, Missouri, assembled the 36 top labor leaders in Washington and insisted they stay and hammer out a recommendation for labor peace and bring it to him. Well, 3 weeks hassle. No result. The railroad unions announced that on May 18th, 300,000 railroad workers would strike. Well, that could shut down America. President Harry called the railroad labor leaders to the White House. They thought for talk.
Gentlemen, if you think I'm going to sit here and let you tie up this country, you're crazy as hell. I am going to protect the public, and if you don't keep those trains running, I will. And you can stick that in your pipe and smoke it.
They thought he was bluffing. So on May 18th, they struck. And America stopped. Truman nationalized the railroads. The workers, however, stayed home, wouldn't work. So Truman marched immediately to Congress to ask emergency legislation to draft railroaders to operate the railroads as but privates. The unions had seen President Harry in action. The strike ended. Meanwhile, war-wrecked Europe was starving. Communists were ready to trade food for power. Truman knew that Europeans needing food, shelter, and clothes could not resist Russia without unprecedented American help. So much help that it would actually strip America. Steel, lumber, wheat, machinery, coal, money, $17.5 billion worth. President Truman and General Marshall then worked out the Marshall Plan and sold it to the voters nationwide on a crash program to save Europe before its starving population caved in to Stalin.
Most extravagant giveaway in American history, the Economist said. Further, he said Truman can be blamed for giving away America and shipping it to Europe. The American move to save Europe will go down as the most unsorted foreign policy of all time by any nation.
The Russians struck back in many ways, but one was a knockout punch. You know about the Berlin Agreement following World War II, right? You know how the Allies would each occupy part of Berlin, which lay deep in the Russian part of Germany, 110 miles inside the Iron Curtain? All right, it was on June 24th, 1948, that the Russians blockaded all roads leading into the Allied positions of Berlin. That meant that nearly 2.5 million people in the Allied part of Berlin would have no incoming food, clothes, or fuel. Russia was throwing her allies out of Berlin, and it looked as if there was no solution short of shooting. Well, Americans, the Russians knew, were tired of war, so it seemed Russia had won. Our highest cabinet councils debated the very real question, do we get out of Berlin? Well, President Harry did not have these doubts.
We stay in Berlin, period.